They're totally at peace with it. They're good with it. They're the most confident short people I've ever met. Hey, come in. Hey, you were coming. Look at you. See ya. Glad you're here by yourself. Yeah, come sit by Eddie. You know Eddie. So glad Jared's here. You may have seen my post, but I don't know how many months ago it was. Jared texted me and he said we hadn't seen each other in a minute, and he said I'm sitting here with Yoko Ono and Sean Lennon playing John Lennon's bass, and he said you're the first person I've got to tell you this, and I was like, can you get pictures? He said they don't like pictures, but he was like sneaking me. But anyway, the album's out now, and that's why I did a post, because I went to Christina's shop this week. Yeah, there it is. And provocative title, Satan's Graffiti or God's Art. You decide. So, sounds very much like, sounds about right. But anyway, I just had a really cool moment this week, because I went in Christina's store, is really doing well, and I said, what are you playing? She said, that's Jared's new album. I said, oh, you're selling that? She said, yeah. So, yeah, well, Michelle, you're on it with your Peachtree Road Race T-shirt on. How many is that for you now, Michelle? 13, really? Wow. Cool. I wasn't going to wear mine today because Ken couldn't be here, and I know he likes that, but I went ahead. But anyway, you remember the video of Imagine where John and Yoko are sitting at a piano in a house? Well, that's their studio in like upstate New York, and that's where it's just so historic. That's where he was, and so the album's out. And I thought, this is amazing. Like, I'm buying an album. I mean, I bought it with a dad discount. I thought, this is so cool. I'm at my daughter's successful store buying an album from my rock star son who just made an album. And for whatever, it's not that Yoko's a great singer. It's the historical, like, what? I mean, she's like 80-something now, 85. Yeah, I know it's hard for you to imagine that. But Sean not only produced it, but I noticed on the tracks he played on several of them, and they've known each other for a while. Like I told you, it's not that I think Jared's making stuff up, but he knows a lot of people, So sometimes he'll say, and I know people that tell me stuff that I know isn't true. So when he tells me, like, yeah, I made Yoko Ono sang on her album, I'm like, okay, are you sure? Like, the Yoko? Sure enough, she did. So anyway, that was cool. So I'm glad he's here this morning. It's been a great week, and congratulations to those of you. Natalie ran her first one, and I was able. I don't want to take too much credit, but I kind of made that happen. That's all I'm saying. When she put on the Facebook all the people that made this possible, I'm like, who else? It was me. Heck yeah. I was like, all the people. I drove all the way to your house for the. Oh, I got it. Okay. All right, that's cool. No, what had happened was, I'd been on the phone with this woman who I was going to buy her number. And I'd spent so much time with her, and she was really nice, and she was, is that too much money? I said, heck no, are you kidding? Like, people are selling like 3 times this much. So anyway, while I was on with her, Ken had gone online and found us 2 numbers. They're back in the W's, but that's fine. And I said, well, that's even better for us to be in the same place, but I don't want to tell this woman no, because we've been engaged. I mean, I know her. We've texted and called so much the last 2 hours. He said, well, this is why you need to speak up. He said, well, I talked to Natalie, and she wants to run. I said, oh, well, then I'll get it for her. So the majority of my efforts was getting her, but I was glad. That's why I said, you better run this race, girl. Because it took a little. Ours was a piece of cake, but getting hers was a bit of an effort. But it was good. It was worth it, and she had a great time. It was her first one. So it's good. And I think Will ran it, too. And I don't know if any other Metronites ran it. Oh, yeah, Tony. He did. That was his first one. He did a really good time. And so it was good. We walked a little bit this year because we hadn't even trained for it. We were like, we weren't even going to run it. So we walked. People say, you should run. I'm like, I ran it the first 25 years. Now I walk a little bit. Okay, enough. All right, we're in agreement. It's a beautiful day. Hit it.
Good morning, and welcome to Metron. Metron is measure or sphere of influence, and we want to help you find your Metron. Through motivation, enlightenment, transcendence, renewal, outreach, and networking. Today is your day to find your Metron, and we hope you enjoy the service.
Good morning, and welcome to Metron. Bonjour, buenos dias, willkommen. Those of you that are streaming, wherever you are in the universe, we welcome you. Happy 9th of July, and it's a great July. The weather is better, and I hope everybody had a good 4th, but I was watching the weather this morning, and they said that the humidity had dramatically dropped. I was like, good, I'll take it. Thank you very much. So it's all good, and I've got a good word for you, and the awesome Eddie Sailors is with us, so it's going to be an excellent month. It's good things to tell you. Good energy, good people. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. So without any further ado, would you please welcome our artist of the month of July, the one, the only Eddie William Sailors. Eddie. Do your thing.
All right. Good morning. How are we sounding back there? Good. I've only met Jared one time. We have a mutual friend over in Cabbagetown, David, and we were having a celebration party for another friend of ours, Judy, who had passed. And just shocked everybody. And so I had a few minutes to sit down with Jared, and I told Jim later, I told Jared, I'm like, Jared, your dad's pretty cool. And he told me, he said, you know what, even if he wasn't my dad, I'd still hang out with him. He is pretty cool. I just thought that was. I've been so busy all week, I ain't even had time to think about it. I've had counters built for the store, and they called me last night at 8 o'clock and said, would you be up for us coming over tonight and installing and put? I'm like, yeah, so I was up pretty late. But then I got, during the night and this morning, I started anticipating this service. It's good to be here this morning. It's just good to be here this morning. All right, I'm going to start with this. My Jesus, my Savior, Lord, there is none like you. All of my day, I want to praise the wonders of your mighty love. My comfort, my shelter, tower of refuge and strength, let every breath, all that I am, never cease to worship you. Oh, shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. I sing for joy at the work of your hand. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you. My Jesus, my Savior. Lord, there is none like you. All of my days I want to praise the wonders of your mighty love. My comfort, my shelter, tower of refuge and strength. Let every breath, all that I am, never cease to worship you. So shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. I'll sing for joy in the works of your hand. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Well, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Sit down. Be seated. Here's an old songwriter that Jimmy Carter loved when he was in the White House. Well, I tell you, I would have sounded a fool if I'd started singing that, if I forgot to take that off. Well, I love little baby ducks, old pickup trucks, slow moving trains and rain. Well, I love little country streams, sleep without dreams, Sunday school in May and hay. And I love you too. Well, I love leaves in the wind, pictures of my friends, birds of the world, and squirrels. I love coffee in a cup, little fuzzy pups, bourbon in a glass, bourbon in a glass, and grass. And I love you too. Well, I love honest open smiles, kisses from a child, tomatoes on a vine, and onions. I love winners when they cry, losers when they cry, music when it's good, and life. And I love you too. All right, before I sing these last couple of verses, let me put my thing on while I'm thinking about it so I don't. I wanted to just tell why, just take a couple of minutes and tell why I love what Jim does and why I love what he's going to do this morning. Give me a drink of my water, Patrick. I was over at the shop a little while back, and I was ringing up this guy, and he was about, I guess he was in his early 60s. And the first time he'd been in there, and he told me, he said, well, this place holds a memory for me. And he says, I bet you don't know that there used to be a church in here where they was having services. And I'm like, you don't say. Of course, I knew I was the guy having services, but in the South, you can always say, you don't say to not answer a question. He's like, yeah, I came to it one night back in the 80s. And he said, my best friend since the time we were little boys, at that time, was a bad alcoholic, and said he literally had almost drank himself to death. And said he called me and told me somebody had told him this about, you know, back then it was the faith movement and laying on of hands and stuff like that. And he said, he called me and he said, go with me tonight. I want to go to this service over here. And he said, my memory is we came to the service, we heard a young fellow preach, we left, and that's been 30 years, and since that very night, my best friend has never touched another drink of liquor. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm saying, well, did he ever come back? Did he put $10 in the offering? Did he ever, you know, I'm hearing about this 30 years later. So it made me think about Jim and what he does. Me and Patrick, when we was riding back from Edenton, you know, it was long, Lord, you need a Greyhound bus to go down there. But we loved it. We was riding back on a long stretch, no music, no talking, and just out of the blue, Patrick's like, you know, we've been going to Jim's 5 years. And I'm like, yeah. And there's a reason why somebody would go and hear somebody for 5 years. Some of you have been doing it for many, many more years. And I wondered why that guy never said nothing, you know, like the 10 lepers, where one that's probably the ratio. Every time Jim posts something where somebody says, man, that changed my life, there's probably 10 more that got the same thing. They just don't bother to turn back. So, which brings me to what I was going to say about me personally. Me and Patrick, we have a period in our life where we refer to it as our summer of discontent. And I don't know about other people's relationships, but it was not a really good summer, and some nights we slept away from each other. We didn't know if I was going to counseling, he was going to counseling. We went to couples counseling. We had some hurt and bitterness that we just couldn't quite seem to let go. So I went to my therapist that Thursday, and she had told me, she said, for the first time, she said, y'all might just not be able to be together. She said, here's what I want you to do this week. You know, every therapist tells you this about everything, your job, whatever. She said, take a piece of paper, and I want you to write down on one side all the things you like about Patrick, and on the other side, the things you don't like. Oh, Lord. And I told her, I said, I'm not going to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I said, I don't like to try to figure out the negative stuff about somebody. And besides, if I did do a list, it would be all these wonderful things about Patrick. And really, we've been together for a long time. On the negative side, nothing. You know, I can't think of nothing. So anyhow, but I was hurt and I was troubled, and we went through this for the whole summer. Trying to figure out probably how not to be together no more, because it just seemed like a mountain we couldn't overcome. So I go to church that night and get up and sing my couple of little songs over here when we was having meeting on Virginia Avenue. And Jim came around and he used some scripture out of the Old Testament, and you know, he was just we had some wonderful services over there. There was lives that were changed over there. Well, anyhow, about 15 or 20 minutes into his teaching or speaking, he said, and what's up with the list? These people want you to keep a list. These people want you to decide your life by a list. And it was, to me, it was almost like he put one foot over into a parallel universe. Wow. And allowed the Lord to heal me by him acknowledging that. And I left that night. I left that night, all the bitterness, all the hurt, all the unforgiveness, everything just washed away. There's something, anytime you're sitting in a space like this, where we're seeking light, we are light, lives get changed. This morning, your life might not get changed. It don't mean somebody's life might get changed. That's right. So that's why I love about what he does, you know, and I love to hear him speak, and I appreciate the work that he does. Now let me get myself situated. Come on in here and get you some Jesus while you come. I pray you'll be our eyes and watch us where we go, and help us to be wise in times we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us by your grace, to a place where we'll be saved. I pray we'll find your light and hold it in our heart. When stars go out at night and shadows fill your day, let this be our prayer. When we lose our way, lead us to a place, guide us by your grace, to a place where we'll be saved. We ask that life be kind and watch us from above. We hope each soul will find another soul to love. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us by your grace, to a place where we'll be saved. Jim Swilley.
Eddie Sellers. Oh, man. When Eddie sings, I always think, oh, he's not going to get me. He's not going to get me. I'm going to, it's like the Barbara Walters interview. You know, you're not going to make me cry. And then, he got me. Thanks for all the things that you said. I never knew that before. That's very interesting. Let the Lord use you, brother. No, people tell me stuff that happened years ago, like that guy telling you, and I had no idea. You may be seated. I remember there used to be a shoe shine stand at Lenox Square that back in the day, especially when I was dressing up every day, anytime I was there, I would get a shine. And I kind of developed a rapport with this guy. We talked, for years. And so one day I did a little Bible study at a hotel in the city back in the day. And so I invited him. And he said, I said, I've been one of your customers for years. You've never heard me preach. He said, yeah, I've heard you preach. And I said, when did you hear me preach? And he said, well, I don't like to talk about it, but I used to be homeless. And you used to come to the Atlanta Union Mission once a month. And he said, a very similar thing. He said, you changed my life. And I said, how come you never told me this? He said, I don't really like to talk about it, but, and that was the terminology we used then. He said, I really got saved then, and I got off the streets. And this is like, I've known him 10, 15 years, and he's never told me this. One day, in Conyers, I guess that Midway still comes there to the parking lot and sets up a little fair. And when the kids were little, I was taking them over there one day, and one of the guys, he said, "There's no charge for you." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Same thing." He said, "I used to be homeless, and you used to minister to me on the streets." It was really interesting. Just sometimes it takes you years to hear something that happened, and I guess whatever heaven is on the other side, I guess there's going to be a whole lot of that going on. I remember when we used to sign annuals at the end of the year, people would always say, I came to Christ because of you. And I'm like, when did we ever have a conversation? Like, what? But it's amazing how different people have different realities that you're unaware of. And that means a lot. So it's been a kind of a prophetic weekend. Yesterday, I thought I need to go in the studio and spend as much time as I can, because when I'm there, it generates a lot of activity. When I'm not there, not so much. And so I was sitting there, and one of the guys that he has a place there, and he actually has a store that we used to shop at a lot. He used to have a store, and very, very cool antique store. Anyway, he came in, he said, "Are you selling any paintings?" I said, "Yeah, but I kind of have mixed intentions out there, because my original plan was to use this as a studio space to build a body of work for a show that I want to have on my birthday next year. So I kind of want to keep the stuff, but also it is good to sell it, and I do like to sell it." And like I sold a painting. We get checks on the 10th, and I sold a painting last week that, frankly, I'm ready for that check tomorrow. You know what I mean? I had one of those days where I pay estimated tax, and then I had to pay my regular, and I don't take enough deductions. At least I'm not a hypocritical liberal. You know what I mean? It's like, I do pay a lot of taxes, but I had to pay like my mortgage and my HOAs, and I had just paid my estimated, and then I had to pay my regular tax. I was like, sweet Jesus in the great getting up morning. I said, "Is there anybody want to open an artery?" Anyway, so I said, yeah, it's cool to sell them. Problem is, a lot of people want me to, like, I just sold one to a guy in Dallas, and I have them priced pretty low. And I told him, he said, "I really want this one particular painting." He said, I said, "All right, if you'll buy it at this price, I'll pay for shipping and handling." I had no idea. I took it to FedEx, and what it cost to ship it to him was more than what he bought the painting for. So then I found, actually, this guy, he has, I don't know how he does it with UPS. I don't want to know. But it was at least half that, so I didn't lose quite as much money. And it turned out that I texted him, this guy, and I said, "Did you get the painting?" He may be watching today. And he said, "Yeah." And actually, the day it came, I got some devastating news. And it was one of my paintings that's got a lot of words on it. And he said, "I can't tell you how timely this was. It's like the best thing I've ever bought." So anyway, I was telling this guy this yesterday. I said, "Yeah, I kind of want to sell them, but I kind of want to keep them." And so I'm just happy to be there. I just love the environment. Like they've got these muralists that are going through Atlanta, and they're painting these. I mean, they're like, it's incredible. These murals that they paint free of charge on the building, and it's just such a creative environment. I just love being there. So if I never sold one, it would be worth it to me just to go there. But all of a sudden, it's so strange when people prophesy to you and they don't even realize they're prophesying. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something. He said, this right here is going to be your legacy. And he starts prophesying to me. He said, you think it's your kids. And he said, your kids are great. He said, but this is what you're going to leave to the world. And there's a piece of you, and he's just prophesying to me. I was getting kind of verklempt. I didn't sell any painting, but I got a really good prophecy. And it was all about how, your energy is in this work. And when people come to this show, they're not just buying a painting, they're buying life. And he was using terminology that I don't even think he understands what he was saying. So it was really cool. So so I got mine, you get yours. You know what I mean? Put your antenna up. There's prophecy in the atmosphere. So, and I have no idea what it's about, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this, but Francis' son Peyton came Corey, Peyton's the grandson. Sorry, I'll get it, because I haven't had a conversation with him, but he let me know. He said your word last week was a prophetic word for me, and it's the kind of thing I used to have people would bring somebody to church with them, and they'd say, did you tell him about me? Like, no, I've never had a conversation with him. But it's just prophetic. So, and that's why I don't ever resist rabbit trails. Like if something gets me off message, I think, well, somebody's pulling that out of me, and I'm just going to go with it. And maybe everybody else won't understand, but I guarantee you there'll be somebody afterwards that will, use that word. Anyway, so that was cool. So I release prophecy for all of you. Prophecy edifies, exhorts, and comforts. All right. Our outreach this month, of course, is the bridge. And he's such an unusual guy. He did a same-sex wedding out in a plantation in Eatonton. And they had a terrible storm, and some of the people were saying that it was the wrath of God. And Robert stood up and began to prophesy, and he was calling about, we were both crying on the phone because a pecan tree fell over, and it was an African-American couple. He said, do you realize there was a time that you guys couldn't have been married here? You'd have been picking up the pecans, and I would have been hanged for doing what I'm doing. And he said, this wasn't the wrath of God. That was tradition falling and he said, everybody started crying, and all the Baptists came to him and said, oh my God, you completely changed my paradigm. I said, Robert, there's nobody like you. He said, I learned it from you. I said, no, you didn't. You know how to do this. Thank you. But you were kind of already on your trajectory when you met me. But it's a lot of interesting energy going on right now. So anyway, that's good ground for good seed. And our year of living your best life, 17, this month is be adventurous. For me, it should have been my 29th. There was 1 year I was out of the country. It was my 28th. That was adventurous for me. When I was nearly 30 years ago and considerably lighter, running's a little different when I did it. Yeah, that was see, I told you I looked like him. That was me. And actually, I wasn't much older there than you are now. I was probably about 5 years older than you there. But, so that's what you will look like. There's your future. But it was good. It was a good adventure, and like I said, we did walk a lot, but we weren't in shape for it. And walking back, we were both like, "Oh my God, why do we do this?" And I said, "You think we're still going to be doing this when we're 100?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, all right, we'll see." So that was my adventure. That's what I'm going to use for my hashtag. If you come up with an adventure this month, you hashtag it as well. Leona had a birthday this week, so happy birthday to her. And some of you don't know. I don't talk about it a lot, and she didn't really want me to talk about it a lot. But Leona's a fighter. Like even when we went out to Eatonton, she had just come out of the hospital because she was having some issues, and she said, "I'm just not missing it today." And I don't even think the doctor had advised you. And she says, "I didn't ask you." And I'm sure there's a good hospital out there with a good ER if I need it. But I ain't missing today. I was like, you better go, girl. So anyway, but she's going to be fine. She's getting through her. It's just stuff. You know what I mean? It's just stuff. We go through it, and we pass through it, and this too shall pass. Remember on first Sunday of August, we'll be having our... you posted that today. It must have come up in your memories about and that was from 2 years ago. My God, I can't believe how time flies. Yeah, it did. Thank you. Thanks for reposting that. But it's our 3rd anniversary. My God. And we're going back to the big pavilion where we were last year at Piedmont Park. John Scott's going to be with us again. And so that's going to be great. And I think if she hasn't emailed you yet, we'll do a board meeting the following Sunday because it's time for our yearly checkup. So if she has a text, emailed you, she will. Ernie and Avery are in Florida with their kids. Sea Island with their kids. And she's probably streaming. She was sending me the shout out last night. I said, "You're supposed to be on vacation. I told you we don't need a shout out." She said, "I know. I love doing this." I said, "Okay." She is truly called. And a lot of people are. I see those pictures. I wanted to text them. You better get your mind on Jesus. I need to ask some questions about Sammy. I think Sammy found somebody, is what I think. Yeah, Roz is up with Vanessa. Huh? That's just that old Pentecostalism coming out in. It's still in there. All right. I think that was everything I needed to announce. Okay. You ready for the word? All right. We speak into this atmosphere. Let there be light. I love what I'm talking about this month. I love that you have an ear to hear. I particularly love this installment of it, part 2. By the way, I've already said this to you, but obviously we're on YouTube, but Charles does a great job putting these on podcasts. And if you, the podcasts are great. If you have an app on your smartphone that has podcasts, and if you just subscribe, it doesn't cost anything, but it downloads them for you. And it'll tell you the next thing to listen to, and it's really cool, especially like if you're on an elliptical or walking or whatever, and you can't watch a video. And sometimes it's actually better to hear it than watch it. So this will be a good one. But our title for the series is Going Next Level: Healing Your Mind, Healing Your Heart, Healing Your Life. And I want to show you 2 or 3 instances from the Bible. And then one from a movie, particularly about a paradigm shift. Let me just go ahead and start with this one, so it'll explain where I'm going with it. Genesis 28. This is a story about Jacob, and this is when Isaac has sent him out. He's supposed to go find a wife and really create a life for himself. And the reason this is important, this is the story of the ladder into heaven or the stairway into heaven. What's important about this is there was a concept that God was only in one place at this time. And this is really when Jacob gets the revelation that God's everywhere, that God's omnipresent. Now, we take that for granted. I think we do. I mean, a lot of Christians think that God's in a church house or whatever. God's where you are. The Holy Land is where you live. And this is an important revelation. If people understood this, there wouldn't be terrorism in the world. There wouldn't be all of the fighting that's going on over a nation called Israel that really was supposed to have been a state of mind. I was raised to believe in Zionism, but I don't believe God's a Zionist. I love Israel. I respect Israel. But Israel was supposed to fill the whole earth. It wasn't supposed to be a little tract of land that people wanted to blow up the globe over. So much of the problems of the world can be traced to people misinterpreting the scriptures and misinterpreting the Quran, misinterpreting Holy Writ, making it into something that it was never supposed to have been. And when God would give messages or promises to Abraham where he'd say, in you all the families of the earth will be blessed, that's a very nationalist mindset. He was, remember over there in John 10 where the disciples, they thought it was only them? And he said, look, I have sheep and other pastures that you don't even know of. You don't even acknowledge them. You don't even know that they exist. But they will all come together and they'll all have one shepherd. I don't know if Jerry in Houston is watching, but she texted me last night. She said, could I do a request for a painting? She said, I love your teaching on all means all. And she had looked it up in Hebrew, and she said, you know, if you can, it's like she wanted to commission something. So I said, yeah, that's cool. I love that phrase. And I was at the drugstore when if you're watching this, the reason I'm answering you in emojis is I was shopping when you were texting me. And she said when I Googled it, there actually is an article by someone that says 10 places in the scripture where all does not mean all. Oh, Lord. Yeah, it does. You look in the lexicon, all means all. It means in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. The whole earth was supposed to be filled with his glory, not Israel. All of the reason Jesus said it's necessary that I go away. If I go away, you're going to try to make me the king of Israel, and that's not what I came to be. You know, I came to show you what God was like. So this is why this is important, but then I'm going to show you why this is important to what we're talking about going next level. This is in the New King James Version. It's just verse 16 and 17. You know, he's on his journey and he falls asleep and he puts some rocks under his head and he has a dream. And in the dream, he sees a ladder or a stairway. It opens up and there's angels ascending and descending. You're familiar with the story? Okay. So he says this, then Jacob, and I capitalize this, awoke from his sleep. I believe that's a very metaphorical term. Let me tell you this, a lot of people sleepwalk through their lives. And that's why words like awareness or consciousness are so important. It says, he awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't know it. In other words, I was under the delusion that when I left my father's house, I left God. Like, that's where God was. I had to go see God there, and that I was leaving God. And now I realize God's where I am. I brought God with me. Now, again, we all, we're like, that's not a revelation. No, for a lot of people, that's a revelation. And I think the next verse is, and he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? Everybody say after me, how awesome is this place? And I'm not just talking about this theater. I'm talking about where you are in your life right now. How awesome is this place? I wrote a little thing about running the Peachtree this week, and I said it's really kind of become a metaphor for my life. To me, at this point, I applaud Natalie did a great time, and Tony did a great time. A lot of people did a great time. Where I'm at in my life, it doesn't matter to me about the time. It matters to me that I showed up. It's a lot of hassle to get down there and do it. To do it for nearly 30 years straight, that's what I take pride in. And I said it's really kind of become, it's very symbolic to me. I've been through a lot of changes in my life, and that's one thing that has kind of remained constant. And I don't know, it's just, it's symbolic to me. You know, the universe speaks to me in pictures. And so everywhere I'm looking for, where's God in this? The reason I'm not saying I'll never do it again, but the reason in this season I'm not serving communion in the traditional Christian sense is I think we miss the point. When Jesus said, this is my body, I don't believe he was talking about some little wafers and grape juice in a cup. That's beautiful, and that's a part of our journey. But when he said, this is my body, he was talking to these guys that he loved. And he wasn't just talking to them, he's talking about this thing that's happening right now. Have you ever just had dinner with somebody and the conversation was so awesome and it was so wonderful? It's like you understand why people wanted to build tabernacles to places like this. I wish I could freeze this moment. This was so good. Like my kids took me out for my birthday in April, and it's hard to get everybody together. Jared's out of the country a good bit of the time, and they're all very, they have different schedules. And the fact that we all got together and they planned it, it's like it was their idea. They bought dinner. They had me Jerry Seinfeld tickets. I thought, I just want to freeze this night. This is like my favorite night in history ever. But I like to have moments like that a lot. I've had moments like that with some of y'all, where we just had these great times, and you want to say, this is communion. I don't need bread and wine for this, because this, you're my this, and this is my this. And he says, how awesome is this place? In other words, just because I left where I was doesn't mean that where I am now is inferior. And people say to me, wow, your life has changed a lot. I'm like, yeah, it's all good. Every phase that I've been in my life it's all my this. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. Is he in a temple when he says that? No, he's out under the stars. This is the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Man, that should be your declaration wherever you go. Exactly. Wherever you are. If you go have a Big Mac at McDonald's and it's really good, you know how, I know you shouldn't, but you know when you're really in the mood for a Big Mac, it's just like, you just got to. You know better, but you've got to, and it's really good. And you know the McDonald's over here on Ponce has really got their act together. Burger King doesn't. I've driven off more than once from Burger King because they can't get their act together. But that McDonald's staff, they're unfriendly, but they're efficient. They keep the line moving. Like there's some manager in there that knows what he's doing. And man, when it's like, this is the house of God. Bishop, don't desecrate. No, I believe everywhere you go, you declare, this is the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. How awesome is this place? I got to quit living in regret for what I used to have, or living in la la land of what it would be great if I just had this. No, it's got to be great now. This is true on so many levels. When people say, if I just could get married, if I just had somebody. No, it's never going to happen that way. You have to be happy where you are now. And then somebody comes along. And even to the point you have to say, and if nobody comes along, I'm awesome enough to be I love me. Get your arms around the word this. Wherever I am, this is the house of God. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, about going next level. And this is how a very important part of how you heal your mind. Because if you always think that's what I used to have. I know I have referred to this over and over again, but it makes my point. In the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, The King and I. It's a true story about this woman who was, back in the early 1800s, she was a widow, and she and her son went to it's now Thailand, it was called Siam then. And she becomes a teacher for these children of this king who had a harem. He was a polygamist. But there's a song in there because part of the story is about these two young lovers. They're kind of a Romeo and Juliet type. They're not supposed to be together, and they have to meet secretly or whatever. And she sings the song, "Hello, young lovers, wherever you are." And I love this line because she says, "Don't cry for me, young lovers, wherever you are. I've had a love of my own." That's a very mature statement. That's somebody saying, I don't resent you for having young love because I had it. And I know what that's like. And if I don't have it now, it's like, the Dr. Seuss statement, don't cry that it's over, smile that it happened. I really believe that's important. Like, look over even your relationships that ended badly. Don't regret any of them. Just say, well, at least I had that. I know what that was like. And I'm in a different phase of my life now, and that may happen again. But even if it doesn't, I've had a love of my own. I've had a life of my own. And wherever I am, this is the house of God. This is the gate of God. However many days I have left on this planet, I want every day to be the gate of God. I don't want any day to be miserable. I want it all to say, no, even if it's not a profound day, just like, well, whatever it is, just the fact that I live to see another one. Hopefully this is happening to all of us who are, the years are moving by. But what should be happening to you is the little things should be meaning even more to you now. Things that you took for granted when you were young, that now you have these little moments. You have moments with your kids or moment with your grandbaby. That's one great thing about grandchildren is by the time your grandkids come along, you're a little more seasoned and you're a little less stressed out, and you're able to enjoy the good parts, and you don't get stressed over the difficult parts. It's just a different thing, and that should be happening in your aging process. That you just enjoy all of it, all of it. Even just yesterday, I know I've already mentioned the studio, but first of all, that little track right there that used to be Sears and all that little area. I mean, I grew up there, so I have a lot of the neuropaths of my brain all go toward bliss when I'm around that area, and to get to go to a place that has a lot of energy on it. Even when we first bought the house in Covington, we bought a lot of antiques at Paris and Ponce, and so I have a lot. It's just good energy for me, and now I'm at a place where I get to go there every day if I want to, and I don't have to be there because if somebody wants to buy something, I'm not there. They buy it through the front desk, so I don't feel bound to it, but I can enjoy it. And even if I'm not going there, I just drive. We were driving back the other night from my parents' house. We were coming down Ponce, and Skip's opened one restaurant, and then he's opened another one there. But it was like late, and people were there at the bar, and it looked like it was thriving. And Ken said, "Wow, he's really doing well." And I said, "I have a studio in there. I don't know if you knew that. An art studio, right? It's like on the other side of that wall." And I never want to get over stuff like that. I want every day to be awesome. As many times as I've been to the beach, I'm blown away every time I see the ocean. It's not like there's the ocean. I'm like, oh my God, look at this. I'm telling you, you think I'm exaggerating, but I stand there in the surf and I'll go, look at it, look at it. The water goes out. Wait for it. Oh my God, it comes back in. It goes out. It comes back in. Bishop, are you really that fascinated with it? Yes. And I always stand there and go, how do they determine that this is the gravitational pull of the moon? How do they even figure that out? And I have all these questions, like, well, if the gravitational pull is that strong to move tons of water, why isn't it pulling us up? And then I get freaked out, and then I go have a nice fruity drink by the pool. And all my problems are solved. Do y'all have like a Bahama Mama or something here? I don't know. I'm not driving. Anyway, the point is about you can't go next level until you're happy where you are now. Because if you think next level is the next job, the next relationship, the raise, the new car, the new house, all those things are fine. But let me tell you something. They don't scratch the itch. And if you haven't fixed this in here, all the stuff that you get, it's not going to satisfy what you're hungry for. We used to say, well, only Jesus can satisfy your soul, and I'm not taking away from that. But let me tell you, I know a lot of people that know Jesus that are not satisfied. So I can say, until you get satisfied with your relationship with Him or with God or whatever you believe is your higher power, until it reaches the point that you're okay with yourself, you can't be healed, you can't be well, you can't be whole. There's not enough surgeries in the world or treatments or whatever. There's nothing that's going to fix it. And I'll tell you something else. You have to fix it. I could tell you God's going to do it. Again, I know a lot of people that have loved God for years that do not have it together, are miserable and unhappy. So there's still something. And by the same token, I know people that don't even really believe in God that seem to be really nice people and are happy and giving and whatever. It's very discombobulating when you think, no, we're the only ones that have that, right? Not necessarily. All right. So here's the first witness I want to give you for about the paradigm shift. The second one is from the New Testament. No. Second one is from the book of Exodus. Sorry. This is the story of when Moses at the burning bush, and it's an interesting interchange he has with God when God tells him to go to Pharaoh. And what's fascinating to me about the story is all the things that Moses thinks are wrong with him, God doesn't fix them. Like, I don't know what kind of speech impediment he had, but he said, I don't speak well. Please don't ask me to go to Pharaoh. You would think if the burning bush really happened, you're having this supernatural thing, well, then why wouldn't God just fix his speech then? Wouldn't that make sense? Oh, well, now your speech impediment is healed. He says, no. He says, I'll let your brother go speak for it. In other words, I'm sending you there just as you are. You're going to go stutter in front of Pharaoh until you realize that your stuttering is awesome. It's kind of the Old Testament counterpart to Paul saying, I was given a thorn in the flesh, and I finally decided it wasn't going anywhere, and God said, my grace is sufficient for you. But specifically, remember in the story, Pharaoh has these magicians, Jannes and Jambres, who, they could perform like magic tricks. And he says, well, if I'm going up against them, I got to have, I got to have something. I just was thinking of Bullwinkle going, got nothing up my sleeve. I'm sorry. Only people in my generation would get that. But look at this. This is out of The Voice. And the way The Voice is written is he writes conversation like a play. Like he'll say, the eternal will say his thing, and then the person will answer back. This is how he writes Exodus 4, 1 and 2. The Eternal One answered Moses, and the Eternal One says, what do you have in your hand? Moses says, my shepherd's staff. And the rest of the story says, we'll throw it down, and that's when it becomes some translations say an alligator. King James says a serpent. Something happened with it. And then when he picked it up again, it went rigid. And the point of this story is that he doesn't send a magic scepter down out of heaven. It's not like an angel comes and says, this is the magic wand. He says, what do you have in your hand? And all it was a stick. It was a shepherd's crook. You've seen that. It's a stick that you goad the sheep with, and you hit a wolf over the head with. It's just, there's nothing magical about it. It's magical because it's in your hand. And there's so many pieces of literature sort of take their cues from this. Not the least of which is Wizard of Oz, which I'm going to quote in a minute. But when I first started really teaching a few years ago about the kingdom of God, I made it a point to say Jesus would always say the kingdom of God is at hand, meaning it's in your hand. It's what you already have. It's not out there somewhere. I think it's a strong statement, but one of the most debilitating messages to the Christian church has been the idea of literal heaven, because it kept people from developing any kind of life here. I mean, we were in the Pentecostal church, we were taught, no, we're pilgrims, we're aliens, we can't feel at home here. We're just passing through our true, and I understand where they're getting that from. I mean, it's like the Old Testament's very full of, the Israelites going through foreign countries and wanting their home. I understand that. And if there's literal streets of gold, as I've told you a million times, I promise you'll see me walking with Elijah and Mussolini, and I'll be like, it's crazy, isn't it? But we're all here. All means all. I don't know how that works, but what is amazing here, Jacob says, how awesome is this place? God says to Moses, what do you have in your hand? I've used this a lot before, but back years ago, I don't remember what year this was, but at the time, she's not now, but at the time, Whoopi Goldberg was the highest paid actress in Hollywood. And in an interview, somebody asked her, what happened? What was your secret? She said, well, first of all, there aren't a lot of roles for African-American women. Secondly, the ones that are written go to Angela Bassett and some of the, I have offbeat looks. I don't have leading lady looks. And she said, the only thing I knew to do was just keep doing what I did, and eventually my audience found me. Like the producer said, take the dreadlocks out. She says, no, that's the way I like to wear my hair. And stop shaving your eyebrows off. No, that's the way I like to look. And, her real name's Karen Johnson, she's had a really interesting life. but unconventional and different. But it was her differentness that made her special. There's a reason why David Letterman never fixed his teeth. There's a reason why Barbra Streisand never got a nose job. Whatever it is there's a reason why Santa came to Rudolph and said, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, Rudolph said, please don't bring up the nose. You have no idea what I've been through with this nose. That's the very thing that makes you special. Don't you realize the thing that everybody made fun of you for, it was attracting energy because it was special? That's what made you beautiful. That's what made you wonderful. I use this for an excuse, and I don't like excuses. But back in the early days, I wrote some songs, and they were, I was getting a little radio play. I would get an ASCAP check 4 times a year, and it wasn't a lot, but it was, I was kind of an up-and-coming songwriter. And then I went to a seminar by people who are good friends of mine who taught me how to write a song. I never wrote a song after that. Because after the seminar, I thought, well, I'm not doing it right. And now, again, that's a poor excuse, and if I was having to depend on songwriting for my living, I probably would have been more aggressive. But I just moved on to something else. I thought, oh, well, I don't do that right. So I just quit. Who knows? If I just kept doing what I did with my little 3-chord turnover, all I knew. Do y'all remember who Phil Driscoll was? Do y'all remember him? Well, back in the day, I was thinking about him last week because Joe Cocker just died, and he used to travel with Joe Cocker and sounds exactly like him when he sings. But when I first started playing the piano, just a little bit, I kind of taught myself, and I could really only play in the key of G. And I had gone up, I was leading worship for Norval Hayes, I just figured out how to make it sound like it was more than it was. And so I could lead worship. I kind of got known as a worship leader. I travel around and do worship for a lot of big ministries. Well, one night I went up there to play, and Phil was there, and this is back in his long hair and velvet pants and alligator boots on, and I'm like, Norval used to have all these demon-possessed people that would come there for deliverance. I thought, is this one of the guys? So he comes up and he says, before the service, and he says, are you playing tonight? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, I'm gonna play the trumpet. And he said, I need you to accompany me. I said, do they know you're playing? Well, when he played, he was incredible. I mean, Doc Severn said he was the greatest trumpeter that ever. I mean, he's an incredible trumpet player. Fortunately, he wanted to play it in the key of G, and I was like, okay. So when we got through, he said, you're really good. He said, I'm playing a demo tomorrow. Can you come play on it? And I thought, oh crap, I don't know how to play the piano. But I was so excited to be asked. I said, back then I had so much chutzpah. I said, yeah, what time? So this is crazy. I'm going to get in the studio, and they're going to know I do not know how to play this. So I remember I went in that studio, and I was kind of freaking out when I walked in because I thought this isn't going to go well. So I went in the bathroom. I looked at myself. I said, do not walk out there and make any excuse for yourself. You go out there and you play that piano, and if they tell you to play in some key you've never heard of, you play it. Walked out. What are we doing? He said, let's start with what we were doing last night. Let's do it in the key of G. I said, got it. And it was incredible. And everybody was going, man, we're just going to shoot one song today. But, man, you're really good. I'm like, well, I just kind of like let the music take me wherever it's going to take. But you have to believe in your this. And stop comparing yourself to other people because what you do is unique to you. The third one, this is from the New Testament, and I love this, also about a paradigm shift. How awesome is this place? Where you are is enough. What do you have in your hand? What you have is enough. It's one of my favorite stories. It's when Jesus, it's after the resurrection, and the disciples are fishing, and he's on the beach, and he asks them, did you catch anything? And they say, well, we've been fishing all night. We haven't caught anything. This is John 21, verse 4 through 6 in the Message. It says, they went out and got in the boat. They caught nothing that night. When the sun came up, Jesus was standing on the beach, but they didn't recognize him. There's a whole teaching in that. A lot of times God's been speaking to you and you didn't even recognize because you didn't understand you're this. Jesus spoke to them, good morning, did you catch anything for breakfast? They answered no. He said, throw the net off the right side of the boat and see what happens. They did what he said. All of a sudden, there were so many fish in it, they weren't strong enough to pull it in. Now, that's an amazing, it's really a Zen concept because it's saying everything that you have is right here. I mean, you don't even have to be a fisherman to know, you know, if you've been in one place all night and haven't caught anything, just putting your net on the other side of the boat, that's not going to make any difference. The fish aren't biting. But they are right where they were. And you could just as easily say, stop thinking with the left side of your brain and think on the right side and see what happens. Look at it differently. Look at it intuitively. Look at it creatively. Stop thinking that your answer is on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. It's right where you are. And it's amazing because they didn't just catch one fish. They caught so many. They went from nothing to too much. So again, how awesome is this place? What do you have in your hand? Stay right where you are. We're not out in a boat fishing. So it's a different thought. Think of it differently. This is why unselfishness is important. If you can stop for a minute thinking about how you were wronged. When you walk around with a chip on your shoulder and a sense of grievance, and the word "that's not fair" is constantly in your vocabulary, you're cutting yourself off from healing yourself, and you'll never go next level. As long as you think life's not fair. Doc posted something this week. It just stayed with me all day, and I'm sure I've said it myself, but in his opening line, he said, life isn't happening to you, it's responding to you. I thought about that all day long because it's really easy sometimes to look at the negative and you're like, good God, what else can go wrong? Really? Have you ever had one of those days you're like, really? I've had them. I had one here recently. Like, really? What? And now this? At least I know this. Once I get on that track, I have to get off it. Because that track, it leads straight to hell, whatever hell is. It does. And it doesn't get better. And the more you whine about how bad it is, it's just greasing up the track. This is making you go faster. And until you say, this is not happening to me, this is responding to me, I am the thermostat of my life, I am not the thermometer, I'm not responding to what happens to me, everything around me is responding to this. This is the gate of God. I'm going to stay in the boat and I'm just going to change this thought. I'm going to put this net on the other side of the boat and stop. First of all, this victim mentality is not working for me. And furthermore, if you don't know this yet, I need to tell you something. Life's not fair. You need to stop saying that's not fair when you were playing games in school and somebody was cheating. That you need to put away that childish thing. It doesn't matter if something's fair. One day, where was I last week? I never listened to Joel Osteen, but I listened to him, and it was like really good. It was really, he actually really spoke to something that was something I needed to hear at the time. And I thought, why am I suddenly liking his message more? And I realized, I don't have a grievance against him anymore. Because it used to bug me. I didn't resent his success. I resented that he used to say, he never even wanted to be a pastor. He was a cameraman for his dad's. His dad was a wonderful man. I loved John Osteen. And ministered in his church back in the day and sold a lot of albums there a long time ago. But in interviews, Joel arguably pastors the largest church, if not in the world, at least in America. And in interviews, he'll say, well, I don't even know how it happened. I didn't even want to pastor church. I was just running the camera, and my daddy said, you be the pastor. I was like, no, Daddy, I didn't want to do it. I was like, shut up. For all of us that paid dues for years, shut the up. You know, for everybody that set up chairs and tore down chairs and rented little, you know, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about people I know that worked it for years and never made it to the level that I went to. Don't stand there and say you never wanted it. Now I don't feel that way. Now I'm like, well, good for you. That's awesome that your dad left you $8 million and several thousands of people, and you definitely took it to the next level. I'm not taking that away from you because you could have run through all that money in the first year. So I'll give that to you. And what you got to say, Joel? I was like, wow, who knew? Joel Osteen's really good. I guess he got saved. The problem was never with him. It was funny. Last week, Christina posted something online because somebody posted something about her store that had never even been in her store, and they put it on Yelp, and it was a negative. It was somebody that apparently writes reviews about everything, and I guess it was a guy. And he was walking into the store, and nobody acknowledged him, so he walked out, and so she said something about, well, then all kind of people were writing stuff that Yelp actually took down because you're not supposed to do that. But anyway, the point was we were talking about. And she wrote a really good response to the guy. She said, you know, if you had just given me 1 second, I would have been, you know, I love customers. And I told her, I said, back in the day when the church was big, this happened over and over again. On the same day, I would get an email that would say, Dear Bishop Swilley, I just want you to know, I came to your church Sunday, and it was like I came home. It's like I found my family. Everybody was so nice and accommodating. And the very next email would be, Dear Mr. Swilley, I came to your church Sunday morning, and that's the most unfriendly, stuck-up group of hostile people I've ever seen in my life. And it would be on the same day. And you think, how do you have such complete different interpretations of it? And I realize it's not us, it's you. If you walk in assuming everybody's not going to like you, guess what? I told you about the guy that called me one time. He said, I want to come to your church, but I don't want to be told I'm going to hell and stuff. I said, you won't be. And he said, I don't want people staring at me. I said, well, why would people stare at you? And he said, because I have pit bulls tattooed on my head. And I said, I'm going to tell you something. People are probably going to look at you, but they're not judging you. And can I just say something? I said, if you tattoo pit bulls on your head, you kind of forfeit the right to be upset that people are going to look at you. I said, I'm not going to judge you, but I'm probably going to look at that. That doesn't make sense. If you're going to tattoo yourself up, why don't anybody look at me? Then why did you put ink on your body? That was the whole point, is you're making some statement about something. If somebody looks at it, that's what you got the tattoo for. It's like, what? Well, exactly. I said, my church is about as judgment-free a zone as they're going to be, but I'm pretty sure people are going to look at that. Any tattoo on a head, ow. I'm probably going to say, sweet Jesus, didn't that hurt? Anyway. All right, now this one, did you find that clip of it? All right, I'm going to show you the clip, but then I'm going to actually show you the dialogue. This is something I've referred to before, but I've never taught it quite this way. For those of you that are streaming, this is probably going to go silent for a minute because YouTube we have copyright issues. So if we use something that's copywritten, they're all over it. They'll take it down. So we're going to go quiet for a minute. We'll be right back. Let me show you. You're familiar with this, but let me show you because it makes my point. And it's a little pixelated, so just. Billy Burke, who is the wife of Flo Ziegfeld of the Ziegfeld Follies. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. I like how you put the words on there. Can you go back and just post the words now? Because I want to go through them. All right. I've referred to this before, but I've never really dissected it quite like this. I was kind of meditating on it yesterday. And Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum actually wrote a whole series of Oz books. Wizard of Oz was the most famous one. And they're really parables. They're which, you know, all good fairy tales are like morality plays. But I've been thinking about this, especially the role that Glinda has, because in the beginning of it, she's there to protect her. Remember, she's the one that she protects her from the witch. And it's interesting that through the whole thing, she really weans Dorothy off of her. And by the end of it, she's not protecting her anymore. And, you know, that's the whole point, is that each one of the characters already, they didn't know what they already had. But Dorothy's character really makes my point today, especially when you think about how awesome is this place, what do you have in your hand, stay in the boat, just flip the thought over. So she says to Glinda, oh, will you help me? Can you help me? Glinda says, you don't need to be helped any longer. Now, that'll preach right there. I don't want to ever not believe in a higher power. I always want to have the Jesus take the wheel clause. I do believe in God. But I also know the process of the journey is to get you to walk in the very thing that God created people. Let us make people in our image and let them have dominion. You could just as easily say, let them not be helpless. You don't need to be helped any longer. There's some, I mean, my God, I've seen the Wizard of Oz so many times I can quote it, you know, verbatim. But I never really thought of that before. Wow, you don't need to be helped any longer. Now, some people would say, well, that's a really grandiose idea. You know, you're always going to be helpless. No, what she's saying there is you've learned things through this journey that you couldn't have learned any other way. Paul said, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. In other words, I didn't get that by revelation. I learned it because I was rich and I was poor, and I figured out how to navigate through both of those realities. And neither of them is the end of the world. You know what it means when you say you don't need to be helped any longer? It means no matter what happens to you, your first response is, ain't nothing but a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you say, yeah, I hate him having to go through it, but my God, I can kill Goliath because I killed a bear and a lion. And this is just another thing, and nothing's the end of the world. I mean, how many things have you thought that's the end of the world? And it wasn't. It just wasn't. Remember the Peggy Lee song, Is That All There Is? And if that's all there is, let's bring out the booze and keep on dancing. In other words, I thought it was going to be the end of the world, my house burned down. But my house burned down. I said, is that all there is to a fire? That's huge. So you don't need to be helped any longer. You've always had the power to find the gate of God. You've always had the power to understand this. In other words, Kansas is not a geographical location. It's a state of mind. And so she says, I have. And then the Scarecrow says, then why didn't you tell her before? Now, I've always, you know, when I've taught this before, I've always said, it makes me want to slap Glinda, because I think, why didn't you tell her? Now I'm realizing there's some things you can't tell people. You just have to learn in the school of life. And she says, she wouldn't have believed me. She had to learn it for herself. That's not in the Bible, but it might as well be. Because that's the truth right there. It's like there's some things you're going to go through that nobody could prepare you for. Nobody could mentor you through it. You know, people could sit outside the gate and stay awake with you 1 hour while you sweat your drops of blood, but it's your thing that you got to go through. Stop trying to get people to understand it, because nobody can understand it. Stop saying, nobody knows what I've been through. No, they don't. No, they don't. Stop expecting people to have unrealistic empathy for you. And just say, no, this is what I've learned. And whatever I can get from people, I'll take what I can get. Like if I have people that love and support me, that's great. But the gate of God's in here, and I didn't know it 30 years ago. I didn't know it 50 years ago. I might have not have known it a year ago. She wouldn't have believed me. She had to learn it for herself. So Scarecrow says, "What have you learned, Dorothy?" Dorothy says, "Well, I think that it wasn't enough just to want to see Uncle Henry and Auntie Em. And it's that if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard." Can I tell you this is how I feel about heaven? I could just as easily say, well, I think that it wasn't just enough to want to see literal gates of pearls and streets of gold. And in other words, if that's there, that's great, but whatever the afterlife is, I don't obsess over it because I came out of God. I'm going to go back to God. It doesn't matter to me. Like sermons about heaven. I mean, you know, one reason they don't really resonate with me. Some of you might have missed this, but back in the heyday of the charismatic movement, there was a real phenomena of people having like out-of-body experiences and going to heaven. Jesse Duplantis did, Robert Slierdon did, that Dr. Eby, the African guy that was in a coma for 5 days. Like, there was a time at the heyday of like TBN and PTL Club, you'd see somebody on there about once a week who just got back from heaven. Just flew in. And there, you know, Paul says in 2 Corinthians, he said, I had an out-of-body experience. I went to the third heaven 25 years ago, and I've never even talked about it until now. It's a quarter of a century later I talked about it, and even now I refer to myself in third person, where he says, I know a man. Like he said, I was shown unutterable things. And he even said, go read it. It's the 12th chapter of 2 Corinthians. He says, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. He says, I don't know if I literally did it or if I had a dream. But what I saw, I've never been able to talk about. And he took it to his grave. He never did talk about it. Now everybody's on Christian TV. Yeah, I went to heaven last... Oh, they weren't smoking. Yeah, I went to heaven last week, and Jeremiah and I were talking. I said, Jeremiah, let's go to this condo. I'm like, I just want to go, I don't believe you. And you know why I don't believe it? When I've gone to third world countries, and I've never really suffered, but I mean just the trauma of, different time zones and jet lag and different living conditions, whatever. When you come back, like we used to go to Peru and we'd build houses down there, and the poverty was so abject, it was so extreme that I would have to prepare people for it. I'd say, look, before you go in here with your American sensibility, just understand these people haven't seen where you live. So they don't realize what they don't have. So don't go in here, because I used to have people want to buy them computers and stuff. I'd say, I don't think you understand. They don't have running. We're digging a well for them to have running water. They wouldn't know what to do with a computer if you bought it for them. You're way ahead of the game, and when I would come back, it would take you through such changes. Like I remember the first time I went to the Philippines, we were out in the jungle, and I was living on a compound. It wasn't like I was out sleeping in the jungle, but we were, it was a lot. And I came back and was on a vacation in Los Angeles. So I went from just extreme poverty to driving a convertible around Beverly Hills and looking at mansions. I mean, my head nearly exploded. It's like, well, I can't, this is too extreme a transition. And my point is, when people would say, how was your trip? There'd be no way I could explain it to them. I'd say, it was very Filipino. It was very Peruvian. It was very, Ugandan or whatever. Like, I don't have any way to explain it to you, because you're not even going to see, in your mind, you're not going to see what I'm seeing in my head when I talk about it. So how much more would that be if you went to a place called heaven? I would think, like when Moses came off Mount Sinai, his head was glowing. What, don't you think if you'd just been walking around with Isaiah and some angels, you'd be like, I'm not ready to do a talk show yet. You know what I mean? I mean, so my point is, and people used to write, Kenneth Hagin wrote a book, I Went to Hell, I Went to Hell. Like everybody was having, they were going to heaven, they were going to hell. Jim Bakker, right before his fall of PTL, they were actually building a ride, kind of like Space Mountain, that was going to be a trip into hell and into heaven. Right. So people have these really strong concepts about heaven and hell. Which, whatever, I've retired from that argument. If you need literalness, fine, knock yourself out. But what she says here is, yes, I'd like to see Uncle Henry and Auntie Em, but home it really is a state of mind. Have you ever gone back to a place where you used to live and you have all these fond memories about it, and when you go back there you realize, I don't live here anymore. Like, I don't really have any kind of connection here because it wasn't the geographical location. It's where you were at that time and the memories that you had there that you carry with you. If that house is no longer there, it still exists in your memory. So she says here, it wasn't just enough to want to see Uncle Henry and Auntie Em, and it's that if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. What did Paul say? The word of faith is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. You know when he said that? People have so misquoted Romans 10. It's where he says, who will go up into heaven to bring God down, and who will go into the abyss to bring him up? He says, neither. He says, the word is near you. In other words, stop obsessing over heaven and hell and realize you create the will of God by the word that you speak out of your divine mouth. And you determine where the gate of God is. Who do men say that I am? In other words, where do men say that heaven is? I learned this. We probably had a bigger exodus from church than now because of when I said hell wasn't literal than when I came out. Hell was the big deal. And I noticed if I said heaven was a state of mind, people wouldn't even flinch. If I said hell's not real, they'd freak out. And it's because somehow in their mind, they would interpret that as I was saying, there's no consequences for bad behavior. So I just stopped talking about it. I said, namaste. Believe what you want to believe, and whatever is going to be is going to be. What I'm telling you is, I do believe my life will go on after this body ceases to function in what we call life. And if that's in a place called heaven, that's fine. But let me tell you something. If God lives in Bankhead Homes, in the 4th Ward, if God lives in San Antonio, Texas, I want to be where God is. The streets of gold wouldn't matter much if the presence of God wasn't there.
But his throne will always be in Cabbage Town.
It is funny. I don't know how much you were connected with denominations, but every denomination has their holy city. I was raised in the Church of God that believed it was Cleveland, Tennessee, but there's also an Anderson, Indiana Church of God that's not Pentecostal. And then we went to the Assemblies of God, and it was Springfield, Missouri. And every Cleveland, Tennessee actually has Church of God of Prophecy, and Church of Christ that are all headquartered there. A lot of religious energy there. But I remember one time, I didn't have the connection with the Church of God that my parents did because we left it when I was a kid. But I remember being in Cleveland with my dad one time, and he drove in front of the Church of God headquarters, and he just stopped, and he looked at it, and he said, there it is. And I thought, wow, you really, to me it just looks like a building. But to you, because that's your epicenter, he probably wouldn't even think that now, but I'm saying, but then, that was how people thought. Then when I got in the faith movement, it was Tulsa, Oklahoma. I remember when we landed in Tulsa, I remember thinking that, this is the holy city. Now I realize the holy city we're the city of God. Duh, Jesus said, you are a city set on a hill that cannot be hid. A city with gates of pearls and streets of gold. So, I won't look any further than my own backyard, because if it isn't there, I never really lost it to begin with. Is that right? Glenda says, that's all it is. Man, I love that. Everybody say that's all it is. He says, but that's so easy. I should have thought of it for you. Tin Man, I should have felt it in my heart. Again, stop being frustrated that the people who are close to you don't see certain things because you can't make them see it. You cannot make somebody have revelation. You can't. The best you can do is show the example of your life and how revelation positively affects you. And then she says, no, she had to find it out for herself. We all do. Now those magic slippers will take you home in 2 seconds. And she's a Toto 2. Okay. This is a very, as much as I've taught on this, it kind of went next level for me this week. Like, wow, you really do have to learn some things for yourself. And nobody can make you see it. Nobody make you see how wonderful you are. Nobody can make you see how awesome you are. You have to see it for yourself. And let me tell you, seeing that you're awesome doesn't mean you're not in touch with your imperfections. You understand your weaknesses. As a matter of fact, that's part of awesomeness, is to understand, oh yeah, I have an Achilles heel in this area, but because I'm aware of it, that makes me awesome. I am at least self-aware. If you can become self-aware, that becomes next level in itself. You understand what you know what your weaknesses are. You know where you're vulnerable. And yeah, you can work on them, but I think we've put too much energy on trying to better ourselves. I really do. I think it's the wrong path to take. When you're constantly saying, I'm trying to be a better version of myself. Like I say it all the time too. I'm not sure that's the best. I think ground zero is saying I'm okay like I am. And however else I evolve will be wonderful when I'm in that incarnation. But right now, even with all, when my dad used to preach, he would say, he used the phrase, the skin, nail, feathers. He would use all these words of humanity. Meaning, we're all very human. The very concept of Jesus Christ is that he is a God-man who comes in the flesh, so that he's 100% divine, but he's 100% human. That's a huge concept. Well, he's the firstborn among many brethren. Stop trying to be half divine. You're all divine and you're all human. I could tell when I walk in and out of it. I can tell when I'm walking in my humanity, and I can tell when I'm walking in my divinity. And it's nearly like, remember, did you ever see like Sybil, or one of those movies about multiple personalities, which most of those has been debunked? But, the psychiatrist would ask for the other personality to come forward, and then she would. That's kind of, when Glenda says that's all it is, that's really all it is. When you're freaking out over something because you're feeling small and insignificant and overwhelmed, you just have to say, okay, wait, I need to find my divine self. There I am. Okay, I'm bigger than this. The word is nigh me. The word is in my mouth. I can speak a word. Jesus said I could speak to a mountain, and that mountain would be cast into the sea. If I believe in my heart that what I say will come to pass, it will happen. And sometimes you have to remind Luke. No, Luke, because that's I'm your father. I was getting Star Wars and Lion King. Lion King is remember who you are. And you have to say that to yourself sometimes. Then I have a couple of quotes I want to use by this guy. He says, you can move beyond the ego's perspective and see reality from the perspective of a higher consciousness. In other words, stop trying to be a good person. Just be who you are. Because you're already good. Just tap into your goodness. It's there inside you. The next quote, Oh, no, this is Matthew 15, 33 and 34 in the Voice. Let me show you what. This is a little bit different concept, but I wanted to use this in this outline. I'll tell you why. This is one of the times where Jesus fed multitudes. And remember, he says, go feed the people. And they go, there's too many people. We can't feed all those. The disciple says, we'll never find enough food for all these people out here in the middle of nowhere. Jesus said, how much bread do you have? Those are two complete different concepts. The disciples are seeing thousands of people. Jesus says, well, what do you have? Moses, what's in your hand? You guys are already in the boat. Just put the net on the other side. How awesome is this place? This is the gate of God, and I didn't know it. This is so important, especially when you're, even when I was saying earlier about paying my bills this week, the thing is I'm going to be fine. I'm always fine. I'm always fine. I will always be fine. I will always be prosperous. I just always will be. And there are sometimes when, when you're writing out those bills and you're like, dear Lord, HOAs went up again? That's an issue with me because I'm like, I know people live in buildings, don't even pay this much, and they got a swimming pool. We don't even have a pool. When I pay my HOAs, I'm like, thank you, here it is. And can y'all please clean the carpet in front of the elevator? Because there's a way I like that carpet to look. Sorry. But just as quickly you go, you know what? Give us this day our daily bread. I always have enough. And we all have enough. Sometimes you're thinking, oh my God. I don't know what, some things that Ken says are funny to me. He doesn't know why they're so funny, but it was Father's Day. He went there. He was taking his dad and his boys and their girlfriends. And I'm not sure what the other, but I want to say baby mama, wife. It's a different day. But we were talking about how much money we've been spending lately. And I said, so you got to take everybody you got to pick up the tab for everybody? He said, yeah, it's going to be rough. I don't know why that struck me as funny. Pick up the tab, it's going to be rough. But it's easy to think, how am I going to pay all these bills? You're going to pay them like you always have. And I can say my God supplies all your need, but I'll follow it with you prosper as your soul prospers. And I know we used to use the term poverty mentality a lot, but it makes the statement. Yes, it is. Far be it from me to defend Ben Carson on something he said, but I understood what he was saying when somebody was asking him about poverty. He said it's a state of mind. That commentator is not going to understand what you mean by that, but that is the truth. Because what he was saying is, you can give money to homeless people until they change this, and that's hard to explain that, but that is true. I mean, the best you're going to do when you give somebody that is kind of like a leaking sieve, that you're only going to remedy it momentarily. People have to fix, you have to realize that whatever you have in your hand is enough to generate income. And that I know the laws of attraction, people say this a lot, but it's true. It's the thoughts that you think about abundance that really attracts abundance to yourself. It just does. That's why sometimes it's a holy thing to go spend money on yourself or go splurge a little bit. Not to live above your means, but once in a while it's important to treat yourself a certain way, as otherwise you forget that your own value. Sometimes go out to eat and just order what you want on the menu, and don't look at the prices, and get dessert if you want it. It doesn't matter. It's not the end of the world. You can't think like that all the time, because that quote, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. A body at rest that's true for everything. Like a mind that's moving toward abundance will always create abundance for itself. And a mind that's moving toward lack, you can't fix it until you learn it for yourself. And Jesus says here, well, what do you have? What do you have? I remember, this is probably TMI, but when Judah did that little, he was on that reality show. We all went out to, Jared was there, the kids were there, Christine had to leave early. But they had a certain thing they wanted us to talk about. There's a way they wanted the conversation to go. And they were wanting to talk about how, with what I'd been through, that I lost everything. Well, that's not true. I didn't lose everything. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I still have my house. I still have my car. I still have a congregation. I still have an anointing. I still have my kids. I still have money in the bank. I mean, like, I didn't lose everything. That's not true. I kind of went with it because that was the narrative they were wanting to make. But later I just felt icky about it because I thought that's not really true. You know, I've never really been without, and I never will be, and neither will you. Think about the things that you've already been through, and I mean even financially, things that you got through that you don't know how in the world you did it. Y'all are getting married in October. Y'all can't afford to get married. So what are you going to do? Get married? Deidre emailed me this week. She says, when can we get the order of service for you? I said, that's your job. Y'all just tell me when to show up. Okay. But not one of us in here. Anybody have kids in here? Did you have kids because you could afford to have kids? Oh, hell no. You know that's not true. So what'd you do? You had kids and you figured it out. One thing, Avery and I were talking about it this week at lunch. One thing that I definitely picked up from my parents, and I don't know if they actually told it to me or it was just the way we lived. I think about some of the, little churches my dad pastored and we lived in parsonages. We never had a poverty mentality. I never thought we didn't have. We always looked and acted like we had money, even if we didn't. And my dad, I wish I could say it's we just had faith in God. I think we just thought Dad will figure it out. He always knows a way to work it, and he always did. And this house they live in Stone Mountain, they paid for it. It's all paid for. At their age, I guess he figured out how to do stuff. And I never thought we lived I always thought it was great where we lived. I've told you the story before, but I got to shut up. One place, the church that my dad pastored before we moved back to Atlanta, we ended up buying a nice house, but when we first moved there, it was the parsonage. There's no way to tell how horrible it was. The house wasn't insulated. And it was so bad that Dad went over and painted it before Mom and I came over to see it because he didn't want us to freak out. When he opened the door, all the paint had slid off the wall. It didn't adhere to the wall. There was no heat in the house. It was like 10 degrees the first few nights that we slept there. We slept, Mom and Dad and me and my dog all slept in the bed with every coat we could imagine, and it was freezing. Now, fast forward a little bit. My mom so redecorated that place that the little newspaper, I remember her name, Hassie Hancock was her name. That was back when they had society columns. And she came out. They did like a full 2-page spread on our house, this beautiful home. They're taking pictures of it. And I didn't appreciate it then. And now I think, wow, talk about turning a sow's ear into a pig's ear into a sow's ear into a silk purse? I'm not saying that right. Man, they just really worked what they had to work with and made it work. And they did end up prosperous. Later on, I guess it was a classic fake it till you make it, but, they don't really want for anything now. But there are things you have to learn for yourself. Somebody else can't give it to you. And then finally, I like this quote. We'll end with this. It's very simple, but she says, when you awaken and are self-aware, you heal. When you heal the world. I kind of touched on that a little bit last week, but I really do believe, that Marianne Williamson quote, when you love yourself, you give other people permission. And that is true. Let me tell you, self-awareness and self-love does not make you conceited and arrogant. It does just the opposite. When you know who you are, you love other people and you want to give, and it's easy to serve them because you don't feel taken advantage of, and it's not at all what people think that think a certain way. Self-awareness. What do you have? Everybody's got something amazing. You all do. You can't do everything. That's a lie. You can do anything you want. No, you can't go and be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. That's not going to happen. But you can take what you have. I have to say this. Jared's a classic example. They started their band when they were in high school. And how many years have you had Black Lips? Close to 18 years. Unconventional, out of the box. I mean, it's a punk rock band. I mean, it is. It just is. But it's really a kingdom principle. He created a life for himself. Never one time in his adult life has he ever even asked me for money. He created a life for himself and has been all over the world, has been in movies. Sean Lennon just produced his album. And when I heard them in high school, I thought, well, that's a little, it's probably a phase. It wasn't a phase. And he hasn't always loved it. I mean, there's been lots of times over the years he's called me and said, I'm sick of this. And I'm like, well, quit, do something else. And then he gets a second win. I understand that because we all do that. Because it's, being on the road and on tour and everything, it's a difficult life. But it's amazing. And some people are surprised when they have done interviews with us why he felt like what he was doing the same thing I did. Because you say, well, that's not the same thing. Yeah, it kind of is. I went to Conyers and started something out of nothing that became something. So we both kind of have that in us. Like, well, we'll go create a life. We won't wait for somebody to hire us. We'll just go do it. That's kind of the way, that's the way we think. That's why I don't ever worry. Like I hope this doesn't happen, but if I came in today and none of y'all were here and you all texted me and said, you know what, we just cannot hear that story one more time. If you tell the story one more time, we're going to freak out. Then I would say, well, I guess I got to go find some people who hadn't heard it yet. Because all I got is my stories. I think my stories are pretty cool. So I'm going to go find an audience. I'll go somewhere else and they'll go, oh my God, we've never heard such a thing. And I'm like, well, okay, sure. Sure, let's go with that. I don't think that's going to happen because I do put some new ones in the repertoire. I do add some new ones. But we're going to leave it right there for right now. Did you get anything out of this today? All right. Let's all stand. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Please remain standing if you'll hit that, and then I will speak a blessing over you.
Contributing to Metron is quick and easy. Simply text the amount you would like to give to 404-620-5044. And now you can give anytime by texting this number. You will then receive a one-time registration form that links your phone number and opens your account at SimpleGive. Complete the form, and you will then receive a successful registration and donation page. For additional information on your account, visit bishandthenow.com and click the Support tab. Then, My Online Donation. When you contribute to Metron, you're also supporting the charity or organization of the month. Thank you for your investment in Metron.
If you have a check, just make it to JESM, and Danny will be back there to receive it. If you have cash, just pay it forward. Go bless somebody. Bless somebody on my tech team, and these guys are super faithful and show up every Sunday. If you want to put something in their pocket, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. You're going to have an excellent week. This word, I seal this word in you. It doesn't evaporate. You're going to take this with you. It's going to gestate in you, and it's going to be born as a reality in your life. something really, really good and important is about to happen to you. Something very significant. Next level is not just going to be a cliche that we throw around. It really is going to be a manifested reality. You're healthy, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're well, you're attractive, you're prosperous, you're successful. You have everything you need. How awesome is this place? The gate of God is in you. God bless you. Go in peace. I love you.